Welcome everybody to the October session of the Water School Africa, and it's a real pleasure to have Rob and the NULC joining us today and share the work that they'll be doing, that they have been doing for many, many years. I've often heard right from the beginning, John, my colleague John, has said so many wonderful things about the phenomenal work that they've done. So it's really, really not just a pleasure, it's a great delight that we have so much learning ahead from the session that Rob and his team will be sharing with us. Now, I'll hand over to John. And just before that, few things is please keep your microphones off so we don't have any background disturbance. We will also be having post the session that the Rob will be doing. We'll have a question and answer and a discussion that happens for about 40 minutes. And within that, anything that arises for you out of the presentation or the video, we can touch on the points around that. But till then, I'm handing over to John to introduce Rob and his team and the work of the NULC, and then we'll get straight into the presentation after that. Over to you, John. Thank you very much, Rob and team.
Great, thanks, Minnie. Yeah, no, it is a real pleasure to introduce Nyahode. I've been lucky enough to have been going there. Gee, I don't know, it's over sort of 30 whatever number of years. So I've seen how it grew, and it was a kind of, I mean, going back to those early years, that was the time, it was very, very pioneering work at a time when Zimbabwe was kind of going down the whole Green Revolution route and big dams everywhere and all that kind of thing. And the whole community-driven processes were just on the back burner. And I think one needs to remember that these days there's more of that. There's more of that kind of discussion. So now, for me, what's fantastic about the work there is the way that it's an example of many, many years. And I mean, the extraordinary thing is the fact that Chimani Mani and Rob will talk about it, has been hit by cyclones on a number of occasions, one huge one in March 2019. And the water system that they built there withstood that. But it's not a sort of random water system. It's all part of a whole learning center, Nyahode Union Learning Centre. It's got a secondary school, it's got post-school activities. So it's all part of that. And it is amazing work going on there, and they have very close links to the community. We're hoping this time we'll focus on the center itself, but we're hoping that next year, early next year, we'll have another presentation from NULC about the work with the community, because that's also been amazing in the Nyahode Valley there. So I don't want to say much more, but just welcome and thanks so much for taking time, for agreeing to be with us. I know it's a bit daunting. You're in a pretty remote rural area, the whole connection, all of that, I know has been a bit daunting for you there. So thanks so much, Rob, for agreeing to do this. Let me hand over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Am I coming through?
Yep, we can hear you. I think there's a slight delay, but that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm sitting here with members of our NULC agroecology team, the people who are responsible in the center for our working examples of different watershed interventions, and who also work out into the community. So they're all sitting there behind me, or some of them anyway. This presentation is part of a new venture for us. In the last 6 or so months, we've been working with the United Nations agency, UNOPS, going into the community, doing things at a bigger scale than we have actually done before. This time we've been able to go into the community and assist with micro watershed reclamations on a bigger scale, being able to put in supplies of clean water from resurrected springs and streams that had been damaged by the cyclone, such that we've been able to assist in the articulation of clean and reliable water, in this instance to 150 families. So if this works and we continue, we are going to be able to work over the next decade, moving through this valley and surrounding valleys, going into the hills, resuscitating damaged water systems, and then putting in the pipes and the tanks and the reticulation systems to take clean water into the community on a fairly large scale. Before this, we have worked on really micro level with small communities. This has been our opportunity to work at a slightly larger level. So the video we're showing is part of that program. We had a group here doing a 3-day planning workshop for their own micro watershed reclamation. And part of that is a walk around what we call our working examples. So on 42 hectares, over the years, we have put in an integrated way, watershed interventions. So this video is the first part of such a walkabout. It's all, in fact, the first stage where we cover most of the bases. Subsequently, if we have chance, we might be able to go on the rest of the walkabout where we see the rest of the interventions. So that's it. Welcome to Nyahode Union Learning Centre. Welcome to our main dam, where we are doing a presentation on that dam wall to a community group that is here as part of a planning process leading up to the implementation of their own micro watershed reclamation in their own area.
Perfect. Thanks, Rob.
To Nyahode Union Learning Centre, micro watershed working examples.
Tokugamuchirai paNyahode Union Learning Centre pamanyuko madiki atinoshandisa.
So we started in 1992.
Takatanga gore ra 1992.
And up into this watershed, 2 micro watersheds, we have put different kinds of micro watershed interventions.
Pamusoro apa pane manyuko madiki maviri takagadzira kuti zviro zvakasiyana siyana zvokushandisa zvetinokwanisa kugamuchirana tichishandisa kudaro.
When we first came to this place in 1985, there was a dam here.
Petakatanga kuuya kuno muna 1985 panga pane dhemu rine hombe.
But this whole watershed had been burnt by fire.
Yes, manyuko aya ese amuri kuona ai anga achikanganiswa nemoto.
So when there was a big flood, the water just came rushing down off the mountain and it hit this dam and the dam broke.
Pakaite mvura zhinji yakakwanisa ku dhamu rinei mvura yese rochopambuka rochodzikisa zvese kuzasu.
There were fish all over.
Wowe dzakadzika kusvika kuroad kwesoko.
I think some people, Mr. Mawela remembers that.
Mr. Mawela anocherechedza izvozvo.
People from Kwirire came with their sacks and they took fish and fish and fish.
Vanhu vakwirire vakauya chitora howe pese nemasaka echitora. Howe dzanga dzirimwo mudhemu hombe ranga riri panapa.
But then in 1990, we had a workshop here, like this one.
Muna 1990 tanga tine workshop pano paNyahode.
And we did this plan for these micro watersheds.
Takaita urongwa hwese hwemanyuko mose ari pano apa madiki paNyahode pano.
What we did then was we took that plan to United Nations.
Takatora urongwa hwose kuUnited Nations.
The same people who are now funding this program.
Vanhu vamwe chete vakutipa mari paurongwa hwetinahwo nhasi.
And they gave us some money to start building these watershed interventions.
ndo pakatipa mare kuti tange kuwaka manyuko aya ose amuchaona panzvimbo iyo.
When you do a watershed, you start from the top.
Kana tichitanga zvemanyuko izvi tinotangira kumusoro tichidzika.
You start from where the water comes down towards you.
Tinotangira kunobva mvura tichiuya nayo kuya kwatiri.
If you start at the bottom, the water will come down too strong.
Tikatangira kuzasi mvura inobva yakakurisa chaizvo yobva yakukura zvose.
So you need to control the water right from the top.
Tofanira kudzivirira mvura kubva kumusoro chaiko.
So right at the top we have what are called swales that run underneath the ridge, the watershed, which capture the storm water that comes down towards us and feeds that into two big dams up there.
Ngekumusoro kune gandiwa rinotora mvura yose, inotanga kutorwa mvura yose inonga ichidzika ichipinda kumusoro ikoko ichizopinda kumadhamu.
So those big dams then, when we have big storms like cyclones or whatever, even in these last weeks we had plenty rain, those big dams, they catch the storm water.
Madhamu ari ngekumusoro anotora mvura zhinji yese yakasviba. Kunyangwe necyclone yakauya yakatorwa futi kumusoro koko ndiyo inotanga kutorwa, anotanga kugadzirwa madhamu ari kumusoro echizodzika iri shoma shoma.
They also take the power, the force out of that water.
Simba rose remvura yose inonga yauya rinotanga kutorwa ikoko rechisimbiswa ikoko.
Because as you have all seen, when water comes with power, there's nothing that can stand in its way.
Mvura ikauya nesimba haikwanisi kumira panzvimbo iyoyo.
Cyclone Eline, water just took houses away, it took motor vehicles away, it rolled huge rocks, big boulders. Water has got a lot of power.
Pa cyclone Eline paya dzimba dzakatorwa, zvose zvakatorwa, saka izvozvo mvura hapana unokwanisa kumisa simba rayo.
So when you do a water system, you always have to think of that power.
Techita zvemvura tofanira kuti tinyatsofungiswa nesimba iroro rinouya nemvura.
And then somehow contain that power.
Tokwanisa kudini kuchengetedza simba iroro.
So as we go up, you will see all the different interventions we have put in to contain and manage that water.
Patichafamba tichikwidza tichanyasa kuona nzira dzose dzakashandiswa kuchengetedza mvura iyoyo kuti irege kuti kutora kuva nesimba kutidzikisira kuno.
And this water system has survived a number of cyclones.
Nzira iyi yose yemanyuko iyi yakatidzivirira madutu mupengo akawandisisa akanga ari kuuya.
Cyclone Eline came right over our heads, but our dams all survived.
Dutu mupengo recyclone Eline rakauya zvinhu zvedu zvingachengetedzeke zvakanaka.
Even Cyclone Idai, which you all know was very powerful, we somehow survived.
Kunyangwe dutu mupengo Idai rakakwanisawo kuchengetedza, rakakwanisa kudzivirirwa nekuda kwenzira iyoyi.
So what you're seeing here is the bottom dam, the main dam.
Iri ndiro dhamu rekuzasi chairo, riri guru chaizvo.
Just up here, you'll see a weir, and then there are two streams going into two micro watersheds.
Tikati fambe tikakwidza nepamusoro pane inonzi wiya, nzira imwe yekubate mvura nemarara ose kuti arege kupinda kudhamu.
And on each one of those micro watersheds there are different interventions.
Munzira idzo zvimakowa zviviri izvozvo pane nzira dzakashandiswa ipopo pakuchengetedza manyuko ese.
At the top of each there is a big dam.
Pamusoro pezvimukowa zviviri izvozvo kune madhamu mahombe ikoko.
And above those dams are ditches, swales, which run along the mountain so to collect the storm water and feed that water into those two top dams.
Nekumusoro kwacho kwemadhamu iwowo kune nzira magandiwa akacherwa ikoko anochengetedza mvura, anotora mvura yose inonga ichibva munzira mwakaona akaita madhishi kudai makomba akagadzira.
So the first question then is, what is a micro watershed?
Mubvunzo watinawo ngewokuti manyuko chii chinozi manyuko madiki?
Can anybody answer that? What is a micro watershed?
Kufunga kwangu kuti katsime kadoko.
Katsime kadoko.
Kachinyuka kadoko.
Small well.
There's a small way. Yeah.
No, it's not that.
And you answer.
What is a watershed? Not a micro watershed. What is a watershed?
Chi. Manyuko.
Have you been, any of you been to Nyamusundu or Hangani? You have been there? If you go to Nyamusundu, when the rain falls, along the top, some of the water will go that side to run into the Biri Iri and the Nyanyati rivers. Some of the water will come on this side to come down through Cambridge Estate or at Hangani through Msapa. You see what I'm saying? Because of the nature of the mountain, some of the water that falls will go like that. Some of the water that comes down will go like that.
Yeah.
Okay, you understand that? That line at the top is called the watershed. To shed is to lose something. When you take your clothes off, you are shedding. So the mountain sheds the water. So that line at the top is the watershed. So water goes that way or water goes that way. Okay?
Mwese muri kuzwa chirungu. Saka translate ndinguraza.
Ari kwasiri kuzwa.
Ari kwasiri.
Saka ufarwa ndo translator.
Zvakanaka. Zanzi izvo manyuko kumanyuko ikoko kumusoro. Chinyi ngazi pane vamwe vakambonga ari kuHangani here kana kuNyamusundu. Ehe, zvinganzi kana akoripo muoni biriwiri kunodzika. Mvura inodzika umwe huko, imwe ichidzika noko. Nyanyadzi ichidzikawo kubva kuHangani ichidzika kubva pamusoro soro. Saka zvese kusvinika kwose kunoitika mvura inobva pagomo. Ndiyo inozi pamusoro pacho papapo ndo panozwi paii pabvute remvura handitika. Ehe, handitika. Shed pane kuti shed water kudziko remvura ikoko chizodini chizochururuka kudzika kwese kwese. Mwazvinzwisisa?
So, how many of you have been to Birchenhof? Seen the Save River?
Ndiani akanga ari kuBirchenhof achiona Save?
You've seen the Save River. Now you see the Save River is a big river.
Yeah.
If you follow that river, it goes all the way to behind Marondera. It comes from Marondera, it flows all the way down past Birchenhof, down near Chiredzi, and then it turns and it goes into Mozambique and into the sea.
Ndiani akambonga ari kuBirchenhof? Taona vanhu vaviri vakambonga ari kuBirchenhof. Hanzi mvura iyoyo Save River iyoyo inobva kubva kuwatershed kwayo kumarondera chaiko ichitenderera kudzika mwana wodzi kudini kusvika kwese kutenderera kudzika ichisvika kuwana Chiredzi kusvika muna Limpopo Gurugudhera tobva yatosvika kuenda kuMozambique. And
It doesn't go to the Limpopo, it flows straight into the sea. Straight to the sea. There are other rivers that come into the Save. There's the Odzi River, which comes all the way from Nyanga. It comes down here, down past Hot Springs, and then it joins the Save.
Tine imwe mvura Odzi inobva kuNyanga uko ichitenderera ichisvika kunana Hot Springs.
There's the Nyahode River, which is all of these rivers running from Biriri, from Makwe, from Hangani. They all come into the Nyahode River. They flow into the Odzi, and then that flows into the Sabe.
Tinayo se imwe Nyahode uko. Kunobve kuHangani uko ichitenderera ichidzika muBiriri ichipinda kunana hot spring yobva yapinda ikoko.
So that whole big area from Marondera to Nyanga to Nyahode, all of that is a watershed.
Kwese kwakakura kudaro kunana Marondera kunana Nyanga kwese iwo manyuko makuru.
Because when the rain falls, all of that water, because of the mountains and so on, is pushed into one watershed.
Nekuda kwemakomo iwo ariko koko mvura dzese dzinodzika ikoko makomo akadai ari mana Nyanga uko no mvura dzese dzinochururuka idzodzo dzinobva dzapinda mumarwizi.
So that is called a macro watershed, where the word macro means big.
Zvinotaura izvo kuti manyuko makuru.
When you look at a watershed here in the Nyahode, it starts up there at the Eland Sanctuary from that fall, what's it called? Bridal Veil Falls. It runs behind there to Nyamusundu, runs behind here, and all of this water is flowing into the Nyahode River, down there to Kopa, joins the Resitu, runs to the sea. This is called a middle watershed, or MESO, M-E-S-O watershed. So the big one for Sabe is macro. This one is a smaller one. It's called a MESO watershed.
Tinayo ana Nyahode inobva kuna Eland, kuku Eland kuna na Bridal Veil. Mvura yechidzika yese makomo aya akatenderedza yese techitarisa manyuko emuNyahode Valley muno. Saka muNyahode unobva erera echidzika kubva kusvika kunana Resitu River yobva yadzika yotopinda munana Harono. Saka ngokuda kwemakomo akafanana aripo mvura dzese dziri kuchururuka dzechifamba saizvo.
So the big one is called a macro. The middle-sized one is called a MESO watershed.
Manyuko epakati nepakati ndiwo etinawo munonya muNyahode umu etinoti inozwi meso.
And then we have micro watersheds, which are the small watersheds.
Zvinotinawo manyuko madodo etinoti micro.
If you go there to your Musasa area, that little stream called the Musasa stream, it runs up the mountain and behind it it's got its catchment. That is a micro watershed.
Tichitarisa kwedu kumusasa mvura yese iri kudzika pagwangu paya pamusasa stream andi mvura inoerera yese iyaye tinonga tichitarisa iri kubva kumusoroko kuno kwainobatwa kudai echidzika ndiwo tinoti micro padiki panzvimbo padiki.
So what we are learning is how to manage, how to use those micro watersheds.
Zvino zvatinoda kuti tiite ngezvekuti tinyase kudzidza nezvemanyuko iwowo madiki.
There's nothing we can do about the big macro or even the MESO watersheds. They're too big. But these micro watersheds, they are small enough for us to be able to do interventions.
Hapana zvatingaita nemanyuko makuru aikuna ana Marondera naSawe. Hapana zvatingaita manyuko madiki epakati nepakati ekuna ana Nyahode yese kuti chengetedze. Asi tinoda kutarisa isusu nawo manyuko madiki atinokwanisa kuwana nzira dzetinokwanisa kushandisa idzodzo dzetinokwanisa kupindira nadzo kuti tiachengetedze manyuko madiki iwawo.
So when we manage our micro watersheds, we are also managing our own water supplies.
Patinokwanisa kuchengetedza manyuko edu madiki awo tinokwanisa kuchengetedzazve mvura yetinokwanisa kushandisa.
We all know how important water is in our lives.
Tinoziva kuti mvura yakakosha sei mupenyu hwedu.
You can go for some time without eating, but you can't go for much time without drinking.
Tinokwanisa kugara nguva zhinji nguva refu tisina kudya asi hatikwanisi kugara nguva refu tisina kumwa mvura.
You can go for 20, 40 days without eating, but if you go 3 days without drinking, you will die.
tinokwanisa kugara 40 mazuva makumana kana kupfuurira tisina kudya chikafu, asi kana tisina kumwa mvura tinokwanisa kufa.
So water keeps us alive.
Mvura inotipa upenyu.
We also wash with water.
Tinokwanisa kugeza nemvura.
We cook with water.
Tinobika nemvura.
We grow our foods with water.
Tinosima zvirimwa zvedu nemvura.
We grow our fruit trees with water.
Yemichero nemvura.
Everything, grasses, trees, all of them rely on water.
Zvose uswa miti yose zvinokura nemvura.
So when we have a drought and there's no rain and there's no water, then we suffer.
Kungava kune kuomarara kwekunze, tinokwanisa kudini kushaya chekudya totambudzika.
In 1993, some of you will remember, we had serious drought. 92, 93, we had serious drought.
Mugore ra 1992, 93, kwakaomarara chaiko chaiko. Saka kwaka kune nzara nekachitambudzika chaizvo.
Here we were walking right up there with our buckets to go and get a little bit of water from, what is the name of that spring? Tumbwana Spring.
Yes. Makore apfuura tanga tichibva kuno kune mabhaketi kuende kochera mvura kwatumbwana uko kune chinyuka chawo chiriko.
That is when we decided, whoa, we must do something here to manage our water.
Ndopo takazotoonawo kuti zvakanaka kuti tikwanise kuita chimwe chinhu pano paNyahode chinochengetedze kuti tichengetedze mvura yedu.
So since that time we have been working on our water system.
Kubva panguva iyoyo takatanga kudini kushanda nemashandisiro machengetedzero edu emvura.
Now we've got a water system, even if it goes dry like 92, we will still have water for the center.
Izvozvi tava nenzira yedu yekuchengetedzwa kwemvura yakanaka kubva panguva iyoyo tanga hatisisina dambudziko.
Okay. So up here we have got 2 micro watersheds.
Kwidza kudai tine nzvimbo mbiri dzine manyuko madiki.
We are going to walk up both of them.
Tichangofamba nzira dzese dziri mbiri.
So these 2 small streams both have their origins up at the top and they both flow down. They join just up here, come into this dam.
Idzi nzira mbiri idzi tine zvimukowa zviri izvi nzira diki idzodzo dzese dzinobva nokumusoro uko kwedzinobatirwa mvura kwedzinokohera mvura yose ichisvika ichisangana pamusoro apo ichizo nzvimbo 1.
And then from here the water flows down, you can hear it. Goes over a waterfall, goes down into the Nyahode River and then whoa to Mozambique.
Mvura iyi iri kuyerera ichipindapo pane gerori apo no spillway ichipinda futi murwizi rwacho ichidzika kuenda muNyahode kunoenda pana situ chaipo.
So this dam is at the bottom of our water system.
Dhamu iri riri nekuzasi chaiko kwemvura dzese dzakachengetedzwa dziri panzvimbo pano.
We've got 9 dams and other structures like this up the water systems. This is just the main one at the bottom.
Tine nzira dzakasiyana, tine madhamu aya anokwana 9 kubva kumusoroko, asi rine iri ndiro dhamu rekutanga nemamwewo nedzimwe nzira dzakasiyana siyana dziri mukati imomo.
So this dam was built by our students with spades, wheelbarrows, stampers, no tractors, no bulldozers. This is done by muscle.
Yes. Dhamu rine iri rakagadzirwa nevana vechikoro vechishandisa mabhara, mapiki nemafoshoro vechirama vechiita zvese.
So this kind of dam, there's no cement in this dam.
Rudzi rwedhamu rine iri hapana semende yakashandiswa.
This is called a clay core dam. Clay.
Iri dhamu rakagadzirwa nedongo. Rinozi clay core. Core kutaura kuti chiumbwa.
C-O-R-E, core, clay core.
Chiumbwa chiri pakati.
A core is that which is at the center of something. That is called the core.
Chinhu chiri pakati pasenda chaipo.
So at the center of this wall where you are standing, there is clay.
Pasenda pe damu rineri ndo pane dongo iroro pakaiswe dongo iroro raicherwa gomba iroro.
Does everybody know what is clay?
Ndiani anoziva chinozi?
Is there a shorter word for clay?
Dongo.
What is the main thing that is different about clay?
Chinhu chakasiyana nedongo nerivhu rimweni. Arikasinza.
Dongo rakagwinya. Rinobata iri rimwe ivhu redu iri haribata harisimbi. Dongo rakasimba.
She just says strong and doesn't lose water.
Yeah, that's basically right. If you take river sand and you pour water on river sand, the water goes straight through the river sand. Why?
Kana tine jecha, handi tikaise mvura pajecha, mvura inokurumidza kudzika. Sei.
Why does it go straight through?
Sei chidinaro. Sei chidaro.
Lusi aribati mvura barikatesa mvura iri izi kudzika pasi. Saka naro riri izwo futi kuparara.
Ine maparticles akakura handiti.
That's it. It's about the particle size. In river sand, the particles are quite big. So there's a lot of space in between the particles, so the water can go through those space between the particles, which are big.
One jecha rine zvakakura handika zvinoita kuti pane mena yakawandisa yekuti mvura idani ipfurire pasi saka harikwanisi kubatana pamwe chete kuti tichengetedze mvura.
In soil, the particles are smaller, so there's less space, so the water still goes through soil, but it goes through more slowly.
Muvhu tinoona vhu redu rimwe riri pamusoro iri idiki rine zvimuoni zvidiki asi mvura inokwanisa kudini kungodzika zvishoma nezvishoma.
But in clay, the particles are small. They are close together. There's very little space in between them. So the water can go through it, but it goes through slowly.
Yeah. Tine dongo. Saka padongo ipopo zviri zvidiki maningi zvokuti mvura inokwanisa kudzikapo zvishoma nezvishoma.
So if you build a dam wall with river sand, it will never hold. The water will just rush through it.
Kana tikagadzire dhamu redu nejechi
even if you build a dam wall with soil, the water will go through your soil and the soil will become wet and the soil will just flow away.
Tingangotorawo ivhunje togadzira dhamu redu rinopamuka futi mvura yedu haikwanisi kuchengetedza panzvimbo 1.
But if you build a dam wall with clay and we take a 1 gallon tin, fill it with concrete and use that to stomp. If you put clay and you stomp it, it will hold the water.
Kana tikagadzira dhamu redu nedongo rinokwanisa kuti tinyase kurirama zvakanaka kana tanga tine zirama rakagadzirwa chaizvo tatora chigaba chiya chekare chiya chaitengerwa mafuta chiya toise ngokongiri yedu yonasa kuti ndi tochisimudza tichirama zvinonyasa kuti itire zvakanaka kuti pasimbe nekuti ashandisa dongo.
So this is a clay core dam, a big one, but you will also see some small ones when we go up.
Apa ndiro iri dhamu guru rakagadzira rinozi retakadagadzira ngedongo techigadzira pakati papo pachirungu ndo panozi clay core dam.
So it's possible for you to make small clay core dams.
Zvakakosha kuti tione madhamu akadai ngema clay core dam.
As you will see as we walk.
Techiona techipira techifamba.
So now to build a clay core dam has got its own way of doing it.
Pakugadzira dhamu rakadai tinokwanisa pane nzira dzekugadzira ndidzo.
First of all, you have to decide where do you want to have this clay core dam.
Tinofanira kufunga kuti ngepapi chaipo patinoda kuisa dhamu rakadai.
For example, this one could have been further down there. Or it could have been further up here. We decided if it was down there, the dam would be too big, And if we put it up here, the dam would be too small. So we decided that this is the right size because it is going to have a reasonably big dam without being too big, without being too small. If you make a dam too big, the weight of the water in your dam will be too much and it will break your wall. If you make it too small, well, it's going to be much less use to you. So you decide where you want to put your dam wall. Not this big, because this takes a lot of effort, but you're going to make a smaller dam like you're going to see up there. The first thing is to decide where is your wall going to be. So that first thing is called siting your dam wall. Then once you've made your site, you dig a trench right across the water course. You dig a trench right across. Right into the earth on that side, right into the earth on that side. You take your topsoil, your fertile soil, you put it on one side in a heap with wheelbarrow. Then you take your subsoil, and with wheelbarrows, you put it on a heap also on the side. And you keep digging until you come to clay. And then you'll have your trench right across with clay and at the bottom. Then you go into what is going to be the basin of your dam. You do the same. You take the topsoil, put it on the topsoil heap. You take the subsoil, put it on the subsoil heap until you get to clay. Then it tosho batata arisa jope sepe tunologisa damuredu to batata futi ivurese rinonga riri pamusoro tichirasire kumucheto tichitora ivhuri ro tichirasire kumucheto kusvika repakati nepakati kusvikira tasvika padongo. Then with your wheelbarrows, once again you take that clay and you bring it into your trench, you tip it, you ram it. Andi apa tasiya pane dongo pasi pane dongo rapoka. Toba tatore dongo riya remudhamu memwe tinoda kuita dhamu riyari techiritora tichiwedzera iri dongo repashi techiridini techirama. When your wall is still small, you put a pipe through it. Kana uyu dhamu renyu risati raperera munoise pipe pasi inoramba ichibudisa mvura. We use a thick wall 50 millimeter 2-inch pipe. Tinotora pipe yakanyasa kusimba yakatimba chaizvo inokwanisa kubudisa mvura. If you put a thin wall pipe, it is going to get squashed in the wall. Tikatora ka pipe kakatetepera inovharika patinonga tichigadzira dhamu redu. And even where you put your pipe, you put stones next to it so that the wall doesn't squash your pipe. Kana patinonga taise pipe paya tinofanira kuisa matombo kuti ivharidzira pipe iya kuti rege kuvhari. So the pipe comes into the dam and then it has an elbow and sticks up a little bit so that it can take water below the dam and you can then use that water where you want to use that water. Pipe iyoyo inonga yakapinda nepakati chaipo pasi yochibva ichibudise mvura zvishoma yakabhenda kudai ichibudise mvura ichindotora mvura kuti ikwanise kundoshandawo kuzasi. So now you're bringing your clay from your basin into your wall and you are ramming it, building your clay core. Unongotora madongo riya rese remunobvisa mwechindoisa mwechindorama mwechinoisa mwechindorama. So you're building a wall this shape, flat on the top but quite steep sides. Munoda kugadzira dhamu renyu zvakadai kuti mvura inorasikira inorasikira imwe
pamusoro pakadi
While you are doing that, you collect some stones, some rocks.
pamunonga muchita izvozvo munonga muchitora matombo
And you build drains into the back of your wall.
munoisa madhweni kuseri kwedhamu renyu.
If you see down there, there's a rock wall there.
muchiona zasi mungachimbofamba muone uye kuno mumbofambai muone ndiro dhweni racho naizvo matombo ese ari kuzasi uko mukaona ari kudhwena mvura yese iri kubva mudhamu muchidziro chese chedhamu iri.
Because even clay, the water will come slowly into that clay.
kunyangwe pane dongo pasi apa mvura inongopinda zvishoma nezvishoma saka inonga ichida kuzobatwako nechidhwenwa futi.
So you need to take that water that comes into your clay core and drain it away so that your wall remains reasonably strong and dry.
zvakanyambodaro tinofanira kuti tinge tine mvura panyambori nedongo kudaro tinofanira kunge titori nechinokwanisa kubata mvura ichibuda zvishoma nezvishoma.
So even if you put a strong clay wall across your stream, if you don't drain it, that clay wall will get wetter and wetter until it is so wet it will go whoops and it will slide down the river.
nyangwe dongo iri rakasimba zvakanyanya richibata mvura kudaro mvura iyi inongouya mvura sekuuya kwainonga ichiita inongouya zvishoma nezvishoma ichikwanisa kuerera.
So you have dug your ditch, you have taken clay from the basin, you have brought it into your wall, you've put your pipe, you have built your core. After that, you go to your subsoil and you use that to put weight behind it. You put your subsoil behind the wall.
Then kana tapedza kuisa dongo redu ratsima zvakanaka takwira zvakanaka pachidziro chedu chedhamu tobva tazodini tazotora ivhu repakati nepakati paya toisa nekumashure kwemugero uya watakachera wetaisa mudongo redu ya tobva tarasira ikoko ivhu rese iroro.
When you've done that, you now cover the whole wall with topsoil.
kana tapedza izvozvo izvi tobva tavhara nevhu riya ri pamusoro rakaivhaivha riya pamusoro pese kudai.
And then you plant with, well, we use Kikuyu grass.
Then vamwe vazosima uswa uyu wetinoti kukuya.
The Kikuyu grass has got strong roots and it also binds the wall.
kukuya iyi yakasimba chaizvo kuti inobata ivhu rese riri pamusoro pechidziro chedhamu iyi.
But if you're building your own wall, you have to think some things.
kana tichigadzira chidziro chedu chemadhamu iyi tofanira kufunga nezvenini.
Water is heavy.
mvura yakasimba.
You know, if you fill a 20 liter, that 20 liter has got weight.
tikaisa mvura mubhaketi rine 20 liters riya rinorema.
Every liter is 1 kilogram.
mvura lita rega rega ikg.
So you fill your bucket, you've got 20 kgs of water.
kana tikaisa mvura mubhaketi remvura riya rine 20 liters riya rinoita 20 kg dzemvura.
So if you look at this water here, there's a lot of weight in that water.
mumvura munorema mvura iyi iri apa iyaya mune kurema kwakakura.
A lot of it. Many tons of water. Even in this small dam, there are many tons of water.
mune matani akawanda emvura.
So the wall, let's say there's 100 tons of water. The wall must have the same weight to hold that amount of water.
tomboti mudhamu munorema mvura inoita 100 matani chidziro chenyu chinofanira kutoremawo zvakafanana.
So if you make a wall with, let's say, 20 tons to hold 100 tons of water, that water is going to push your dam.
tikagadzira chidziro chinoita 20 kg 20 tons togadzirazve mvura inoita 100 tons dzinorema kudaro chidziro chinodini chinopamuka.
So don't think you can make a small wall to hold a lot of water.
hatikwanisi kugadzira chidziro chidiki tochengeta mvura yakawandisa.
Your wall must be strong enough, have enough weight in it to match the amount of weight of the water you want to hold.
chidziro chedhamu redu chinofanira kusimba zvakanyanya kuti chikwanise kutora mvura yakawanda yakasimba.
The next thing, you must have, your wall must be above the water for about a meter.
Mvura yenyu inofanira kunga iri chidziro chinofanira chiri pamusoro kwemita pane mvura.
So if you have big rain like we've been having, and that big rain comes into your dam, the water must not go over the top of your dam. If the water goes over the top of your dam, it will cut it and it will destroy it.
Mvura ingauya yakawandisisa yakakura zvekuti mvura haifaniri kuti ifambe nepamusoro pechidziro chedhamu.
So your wall must be high enough so that even if there's a big storm, the water will not quite get to the top.
Chidziro chinofanira kuti chikure chakasimba kuti mvura yauya irege kuramba ichinyanya kufamba nepamusoro pedhamu.
And then you must have a good spillway.
Tinofanira kuva nemugero unozi unorasira mvura. What is spillway?
Let's walk.
Ngatiende paspillway.
Okay, so this is a spillway. The spillway does not come over the dam wall because then it will cut into the dam wall.
Spillway aiski pakati pechidziro chedhamu asi inokuti inokwanisa kuti kubvamura.
So the spillway is on the side on raw earth.
Spillway iyo inoiswa kudivi reivhu risina kumbotocherwa haro.
So you can see, even though the dam is full, that is the amount of water coming. But the spillway is much bigger.
Dhamu razara iri mvura iri kutorasikira iyo asichi mugero iwowo hauna wakatokura zvakanyanya.
So that even in a cyclone, if a lot of water comes, it can go right across.
Nyangwe necyclone yauya mvura iyoyo mvura yazara painosvikira padhamu yorasikira kudai.
So your spillway must always be big enough to be able to carry water even from a cyclone.
Mugero iwowo unofanira kukura zvakanyanya kuti utore mvura yese inorasikira mudhamu kuti uchengetedze dhamu irori.
And it's always a good idea to keep your spillways clean and clear.
Zvakakosha kuti mugero iwowo urambe wakachena uchengetedze dhamu iri zvakanaka. Musayane marara.
So what we do here, whenever the rainy season is coming, we check all of our spillways to make sure that they are clear.
Panapa tinotarisa kuti mvura yakuda kuuya zviya tinonga tichitarisa maspillway iwawawo kuti hapana marara here, hamuna ivhu rakanyanya here rakavharidzira kuti dhamu imwe murege kuonga muchikanganisika.
So it's no good spending a lot of time and money putting a strong wall and a big dam and then have a spillway that is not big enough.
Hazvina kunaka kuti wapedze mari yenyu nekugadzira chidziro chenyu chakanaka spillway isiripo isina kukurazve zvakanaka.
Because if there's a big flood of water, your spillway is not big enough, the water will go over your dam, it will cut your dam and finish.
Kana spillway iyo isina kunyatsokura zvakanaka muchidziro chenyu chakanaka mvura ingatofamba nepamusoro pedhamu ipapo hapana zvimwaita.
So what you've seen here are two different interventions. One is the clay core dam.
Panapa taona nzira mbiri dzatakapindira ndidzo dzakuti tine clay core dam iyoyi dhamu redu redongo nespillway mugero wedu wekurasire mvura yese yazarisa mudhamu.
And the spillway is another intervention.
Spillway iyoyi mugero unorasira mvura kuti yazarisa mudhamu.
All right, now we can go up. Let's go to the weir,
Yes, takwenda uko kuwiya.
to the next intervention.
Nzira imwe etakapindira ndiyo dambudziko redu.
Madam,
Hello.
ndine mubvunzo pamugero apa.
Bvunzai.
Kuti mugero une mameasurements awo here kuti sekukura kwakaita dhemu. Kuti dhemu redu rakakura mameters akati. Saka mugero wedu toukudzawo mameters akati kana 1 meter kana kuti chiiti chiuchera unotora mvura.
Measurements of the spillway.
Wow, fantastic. Thanks so much. So interesting. It's really good to go slowly through the basics, and these small dams going forward are going to be so critical in terms of our water. So thank you very, very much, Rob. Thank you very much to the Nyahode team. I know some of you are sitting there. That's a few comments in the chat saying what a useful video, and people would like to look at it again. And we will be putting this up online, and so you will be able to watch it again whenever you want, whenever you like. So now it's a chance to ask questions. If you've got any questions, any comments, and it's a very open discussion. Don't feel that your question is too simple. Ask any question you have. It's important that we really understand what's going on. So don't worry about that. Don't be put off by that. You may have some comments. You may have experience with building such a dam yourself. Let's open it up. We've got just over half an hour, because we always finish at 1.5 hours. We know people have got other things to do. So let's open it up for any questions, discussion, comments.
I think there is a first question from Sabine, who's asking, is there a calculation model in order to know how wide and high should your dam be, as well as your spillway? Rob.
You can ask the engineers. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, there is an engineering approach where they will measure the catchment. They will do averages on the amount of water that you are likely to expect, even in an extreme event. They will work out the amount of water that will run through your catchment. They will then be able to work out the dimensions of the wall that are required to be able to hold that power of water. So yes, there is an engineering approach to this. We didn't really use the engineering approach. What we do is we always try to make our walls bigger and stronger than we think we should. And we try to make our spillways deeper and broader than we think we should. So far, that rule of thumb has worked for us. But sure, engineers will be able to work it out for you and tell you more or less exactly how big, how strong, how heavy your walls should be, how big your spillway should be.
That's such an amazing answer, Rob, because it reminds me very much of the work that we'd been doing in India. And we'd taken some of a civil engineering firm who was very interested in doing this work with us, called Arab. And the engineers there asked one of our village engineers who were building these small dams, how do you know how big and high to build the dam, or how deep to dig? And there was this beautiful silence while the villager looked at the hole in the ground and the engineer looked at the hole in the ground for about 3 minutes. And after which, our wonderful village engineer just shrugged his shoulders and said, we just know. So that power of community wisdom, of knowing and understanding how much that landscape can withstand, that rule of thumb that you speak about, that's a wisdom which stands in very good stead when building community interventions like this. And I think that's what you're saying as well, Rob. Am I right?
Yes. We have seen instances where people in community have not put enough weight into their walls and they get swept away. So people must put enough weight into their walls. That's the key thing. And the spillways must be big.
So do you think it's a trial and error also? Sometimes when you learn from when the wall washes away that, oh gosh, we should have put a lot more weight in the wall should have been thicker.
Yeah, as I say, when we first came here, the big wall right where we were standing was washed away. What we learned from that was that the damage in the catchment had allowed a strong storm to just rush down that catchment, and then it had a huge power. So what we learned from that was we needed not only to do interventions to slow the water down, but we also needed to do woodland management, so that as much of the water that falls in the catchment is actually absorbed into the soils as well, to reduce the momentum of water rushing down the mountainside.
Great, thanks, Rob. And there's a question in the chat around people using the water. What are you using the water for? Maybe share a little bit on that.
We have these 9 major interventions. Every single one of them has got a pipe through it. And those pipes feed into a network of tanks that we have constructed through our 42 hectares. And those tanks feed kitchen water, they water gardens, water orchards. We have a lot of people here. We have about 1,000 people drawing water from our system every day for domestic purposes. That takes a lot of supply. So primarily, the water goes from the clean sources into tanks that feed human consumption for hygiene, cooking. But then we also have water from dam sources, which are not as clean, which then get fed into vegetable gardens, tree orchards, and the like.
Great, thanks. So that was Joyce Mwangi from Kenya asking. I hope that's answered okay for you, Joyce. Thanks for the question. Any more questions, comments, reflections from anyone?
Yes, Esther, you can unmute and ask your question.
Maybe nice to say where you, just people know where you're from and so on, just as a brief introduction. Go ahead, Esther. I see you've unmuted, but we're not hearing you. Maybe connection. The other alternative is to write your question in the chat, because you've unmuted, but we're not hearing you. Sorry about that. I think Esther, can you put the question in the chat perhaps, and then or your comment or whatever it is? Anyone else have a question or comment? I thought Robert was when you were talking about the students, I thought maybe you could say a little bit about how a number of students actually, I mean, the school fees are not very high, but a number of students paid for their school fees by working in the holidays to building those dams. I don't know if you said one or two things about that. I think people might find that interesting.
Yes, we began here as a school in 1986, and we began as an adult education center because of young adults who'd missed school because of the War of Liberation. So many of the people who came here as these young adults were underprivileged. They were very keen to get the education, but many did not have the funds to be able to pay for it. So we set up work teams for these young adults. So for 20 days, every school holiday, the young adults would join teams. And as such, they were the ones that put in the roads. This land use design that we put up together when you were our facilitator, John, in 1990. This land use design needed roads, pathways, and watershed interventions of various sorts. So right from the beginning, these work teams through those years, through the 90s, they were the young men and women who came with their shovels and their wheelbarrows and their stompers and put in the roads, put in the fences, put in the water harvesters, and built the dams, the weirs. So that's what it was. That was the force that enabled us to put this whole watershed system into place. To this day, we remain focused. We're much bigger now. We're now an A-level school with over 700 students. We've got a post-O-level technical and vocational program where we train carpenters, even agroecologists. We now have 37 teachers in the school, and we have our agroecology team, and we have a team of trainers. So we're now an institution of close to 1,000 people with about 50 members of staff, but we're still focused on people who come from less privileged. We still keep fees low. We still even have work teams, although nowadays the work teams are Form 1s and they seem very small and not to the kind of power that our work teams, many of whom are sitting here right behind me, had in the early years.
That's amazing. I mean, often the question is asked about community engagement and funds, and the next question is, where do young people fit in? So this is a tremendous way of actually doing something for your community, for your region, and actually funding your own studies as well. That's a really good way to get the youth involved in the future of their region, as well as learning what needs to happen in the area, what really needs to happen. Thank you, Rob. That sounds something that I think across the world could be, people could pick that up. Esther has put in her question. How do you manage and maintain the water systems?
That's a constant preoccupation. Because it's quite easy to take them for granted and just go about your normal daily work. And then, like this last weekend, we had a sudden storm. It's not yet the rainy season, but we had a huge storm on Sunday that came for 2 hours. Our rain gauge overflowed in 2 hours. That's 100 millimeters in less than 2 hours, just this last Sunday. So we had this huge amount of water just coming at us. Fortunately, our spillways were able to absorb, but immediately afterwards, our team has been up there with spades, cleaning and clearing them up again, because we're now heading into the rainy season. So the biggest and most important thing to do every year before the rainy season is to get in there and make sure that all your swales, all your spillways are clean and cleared so that the water moves through them unimpeded. That's the most important part of it.
So really the onus and responsibility of keeping your eye on the spillways and the interventions clear is very crucial. I mean, and you have to keep your eye on that ball as and when required, not just on an annual basis.
Rob, I think we're going to
very much so. I mean,
go ahead.
No, I said quite a few of the spillways we've been cleaning out have been clogged up with leaves. And the water then pushes down like whole bundles of leaves, and then they collect at a point along a spillway, they block the spillway, and then the water overflows and runs where it shouldn't. Also, of course, there's growth. Plants grow into spillways, of course. So we have to do both. We have trees falling. We have to go and make sure that they are cut out, that plant growth is cut out, that leaf accumulation is swept away. So yes, it's quite important to keep your eyes on especially your spillways and your swales.
I mean, it's very much like a duty of care for the landscape. So if you really want your landscape to be lush and healthy, whatever system you put in, it won't just function by itself. You also look after it. It's like our bodies. It's a duty of care. Whatever we put in, we put in carefully, and we maintain it, and we look after it. So it's very much similar. Building your interventions and then expecting them to function without any care will eventually bring it to a halt, just as the leaves clog it at some point. So the care is equally a part of the building of it. And I think that's true for everywhere. Another question here is there any other element like fish integration in the water?
We do have fish in all of our dams, whether they are earth, clay core dams or hillside dams or ponds. Primarily the fish here are to eat the mosquito larvae. They keep the water clear of mosquitoes. The mosquitoes lay their eggs on the top of the water, and then the larvae kind of hang into the water, and the fish come up from below and eat them. So we don't feed the fish. Other people do. They take leftover mini meal or whatever, throw it into dams and feed the fish and then harvest the fish. We don't actually do that. We go and fish every now and then when the fish get big enough, and a few people will have a bit of fish, but we don't really use the fish to add to our nutrition or to our income. There's been talk of doing so, but up to now we have not. They have been primarily to keep the mosquitoes down and to prevent malaria from creeping up the mountain.
So that has actually kept malaria incidences low.
Oh, very much so. Very much so.
Very interesting.
Yeah, then I mean, I think some people worry about open water sources being sources of mosquito. But I mean, if a water is a living system, then it'll be a mosquito controller. And it controls the mosquitoes. So that's great. And maybe linked to that, Rob, I think by the end of the hour and a half, we'll have sucked you dry of all your experience and knowledge. But linked to that, Joyce is asking a follow-up question, a bit more in the domestic use around the sort of safety, hygiene, that kind of thing. I don't know if you can say something on that. She'd like to hear.
Well, we have this series of water tanks. Each water tank is actually 2 water tanks. We have a first water tank, which is where the water runs in, and any particles deposit in that first smaller tank. And then on the other side of that tank, at a higher level, we have clean water that runs into a second tank. So each and every tank that supplies water to people is in fact 2 tanks. We don't want to put chemicals into our water. So we do our very best to make sure that the water that comes out of the second tank is clean and clear. Occasionally we get the Ministry of Health coming up, and they take samples away and they go and put them under microscopes to look for particles, especially fecal particles. So far, we have managed to keep our water clear and clean. We are on top of an iron ore deposit, so we have quite a lot of iron oxide in our water systems. But they, to a large extent, get deposited in the first tanks, in the filter tanks, before they go into the main tanks. People then come and take their water primarily in buckets. We run water into the actual school kitchens and so on directly. But for community, we have these tanks where people come and take their water away in buckets, their domestic water.
And what kind of filters are there between the 2 tanks?
No, the first tank itself is the filter.
I see.
Because as the water runs into the first tank, if it's got any particulates in it, those particulates get deposited at the bottom of that first tank. And then the water on the other side of that first tank that runs into the second tank is clear. Of course, we make sure that the sources where the water comes from are well protected and very clean. So we try and make sure that there's no human habitation above a source of water that is going to be used for domestic purposes. That's clean, that's very clear. Then we try and make sure that there's no animal pollution around those water sources. We try and make sure that the water sources themselves, the springs, because we have a couple of major springs, that those springs are kept clean and clear. We put caps over the springs to make sure that the water itself doesn't get direct sunlight, so that algae don't grow in the water. So there's as much, if you like, hygienic care of the springs. Then the water that runs from those springs goes through these 2 tank systems to drop particulates. And so far we get away without having to put any chemicals in our water.
So the drinking water is all from the springs, not from the dams?
No, from the springs. The dams don't feed drinking water. The dams go into gardens and orchards.
Right. Yeah. So then automatically spring water is usually always very pure. Right.
As long as there's nobody living above it. If there's nobody living above and you don't get fecal runoff into your area. Oh, and the other thing is to try and prevent any surface runoff into the springs. So we only have water that has come through the earth and therefore has been filtered by the earth. 1 meter of earth is enough to take most muck out of water.
Could you repeat that again? Sorry, I missed it. 1 meter of earth
is a filter in itself. So if you make sure that all the water coming into your spring is not coming from runoff from the surface, but is actually filtering through the earth, by the time it filters into your spring, it's clean.
Wonderful. That's really, I mean, that's the ideal one reaches for, that you know, that the drinking water is filtered by the earth. That's what well water and thing. But spring water is even more pure, because that's what's coming out, and it hasn't been standing in a well.
Great. Okay, so we're kind of getting near the end. Just a quick reminder: any of you who are coming on the call for the first time and are not part of our email list, please put your email address if you'd like to make sure that you are warned about when the calls are coming on and you receive the notices. Please put your email address in the chat and we'll make sure you get on that list and you'll be told about the next call. And we will be having the next call in early November. These calls are the first Tuesday every month at the same time. So 1200 East African, 1100 Southern African, 900 GMT. So that, I don't know, Minnie, you want to say 1 or 2 lines on the next one, just to let people know?
Yeah, the next one, the next session, which will be on the 4th of November, is actually quite a momentous one, because Water School India is starting, and one of the key thoughts behind the water schools globally is that eventually there's cross-fertilization between the water schools in the different regions. So Water School India will make a little small presentation around the work that they're doing in a very remote part of Bundelkhand, which is in Madhya Pradesh, and it borders Rajasthan, and it's one of the driest parts of the country, and how they've been working with a women's group, how they've enabled a women's group to come to the fore to look after and create their own water sources against all odds, especially social taboos and male patriarchal systems. And they have done phenomenally well. So it's a very interesting session, and it'll be a very good outing for Water School India to meet their counterparts in Water School Africa. They're very excited about it, and do join us if you can, and hear about what they're planning to do in terms of reforesting a whole region in that area, what used to be a forest. So that's the next session. That's going to be on the Tuesday, the 4th of November, and we will send you a write-up and about it in time. But this is just for your diaries.
Thanks, Minnie. And we've got another one lined up from the dry part of Kenya in December. But more on that later. Any final comments, thoughts, reflections from anyone before we wrap up for the hour and a half?
I also do want to say that this is part one, John. No, so we
Yes,
will
yes.
have
No,
Rob
no.
in the coming year.
No. Yeah, no. Hopefully, Rob, you and your team are up for that. We'd love to have more on this as part of our program for next year, which we'll probably publish early in January next year. We'll have a program for the year. So if that's okay.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. That was really clear. And
More than okay.
Looking forward to the next one.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. Okay, nice comments coming in the chat. If there are no more questions, just a reminder that this will be posted on the Waterways, the Water School Africa website, so anyone can go and listen to that again if you would like to, and it'll be available there just as all the previous presentations are there if you want to go and listen to them. Lots of interesting presentations we've had. We've been really lucky. If there are no more questions...
Maybe I'll just add here, John, that we're in the process of a changeover to a dedicated website to the Water School Africa. So there might be a time lag between what's presented and it coming on, but it'll be a much easier and more streamlined website for people to take, to plug into and get into and to see the ones and hear the ones, reruns of previous sessions. So thank you for your patience in waiting for some of that to come up properly for you in the coming time. Somebody's working on it very hard.
Great, thanks Minnie. And finally, a very big thanks to Rob and the Nyahode team. This is exactly what the Water School Africa is about. We know there's loads of excellent work going on all over with communities, some of it being going not as long as this perhaps is not that common, but been going on for a while. And the Water School Africa is about linking that work, enabling learning between communities, so that this kind of work can really start to upscale, and we can, because we know that water is becoming more and more of a critical issue, and we've got to do everything to sink every drop of water. And I think this example of Nyahode, where they capture every water, and the only water that leaves their micro watershed is clean water for those below. I think that's a fantastic example, and the way it's managed to withstand cyclones, fantastic, and so much to learn from it.
Maybe Rob, if you want to say a last few words for our group.
Over to you, Rob, to say the last words.
Yeah, thank you. We had an opportunity in 1998 to go to India and to visit ancient and modern watershed management practices. One of our most important books is a wonderful book called Dying Wisdom, which tracks all the really ancient, hundreds of years old water systems that are being rediscovered and to a large extent revitalized across central and southern India. So we've already got a big debt to learnings we have made from deep and ancient watershed management systems in India. So thank you very much. And it's been a great pleasure for us and from our team. Can you say thank you?
Thank you.
So we've all enjoyed this exposure very much indeed. Thank you.
And we look forward to more in the coming year. Everybody, thank you very much. Please do send in your emails if you want to join the group and know more of these sessions. And any comments, suggestions, any thoughts you have on work that you've seen are always welcome.
Yeah, that's another good one. We're any presentations that you think might be good, any kind of work going on, especially at community level, please share with us and we can include it on the program. And even if there's a sort of relatively small one and it might not be a whole session, we can look at combining and having. So we love to hear about any work going on. We want to profile that work on the Water School Africa. Okay, thanks so much and have a great day, and see you next time in a month's time, the first Tuesday of November at 1200 East African time.
Bye for now.
Bye everybody.